At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Ooh, later with Mo Kelly. Okay, AM 640.
11K left behind a decorated military career in the Black Ops to live a simple life working construction. But when his boss's daughter, who is like family to him, is taken by human traffickers, his search to bring her home uncovers a world of corruption far greater than he could have imagined. So sets the stage for the new movie, A Working Man, starring Jason Statham, now in theaters.
You shot a foot to the left, I'll be dead.
I wanted you dead, you'd be dead.
From the director of The Beekeeper.
A 19-year-old girl was kidnapped.
She a good kid?
She's a great kid. She's like family to me.
Get my back if I ever need it.
This is human trafficking. I'm gonna find her.
You better go full on.
Time to get to work. She's hunting us.
I'm gonna cut your heart out.
Good luck.
Get to work, Jason Statham.
Oh, that is not good. Do you know who we are? People whose mommy dresses them funny.
Look at those bricks. You're a working man.
That's right. Let's play.
And I'm so pleased to be joined by its writer and director, David Ayer. David, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
David, you along with Sylvester Stallone wrote A Working Man, and given that I've seen The Beekeeper, also with Jason Statham, I've also seen Suicide Squad that you directed, I've seen Training Day, SWAT, The Fast and Furious that you wrote. I say all that to say you know a little something about action movies and what works. What are some of the rules that you swear by in making a good action movie?
I think it's also having a lot of heart in it. It's having great characters, so that when the action kicks off, we care about who's doing it and why it's happening. And in this case, Jason's really the king of the genre. I mean, he's his own action genre, and just giving him the opportunity to show up as an actor and really have some love on screen and really give him a righteous mission, I think is what sets this film apart.
In watching A Working Man, and you kind of hinted at it right there, I'm reminded of this rapport that you have with Jason Statham, but also Michael Pena. What is it that you like about working with them individually or even collectively?
With Jason, this is a guy that does his own stunts. This is a guy that has an encyclopedic knowledge of action. He's been doing this a long time, and he's really good at it. And the thing that I've learned is just how good of an actor he is and how much heart and soul he has. And it was a great thing to team him up with such a strong actor like Michael Pena, who is just an incredible actor, really strong. He can take a room over, take the scene over, and he just grounds everything. So anytime I can put actors like that together, you can see the result.
Jenny's missing.
What do you mean missing?
She went out with her friends on Friday. Saturday, we were worried, so we called the cops, and then on Sunday, she had a piano recital on Sunday night.
We invited half our family. My cousin Denora's a police captain in Philly, and she says they don't work these cases. They take a report and forget about it. Can you help us?
I can keep this item running smoothly.
No, help us find Jen.
My dad was a Green Beret. I could see you guys coming a mile away. Yelling bad guys. Jump out of planes. You get those bad guys.
I'm a different person now.
Since you mentioned Jason Statham and how he does his own stunts, how does an idea for an action scene, be it in a Working Man or any other movie, for you, complete with that sophisticated fight choreography, how does it go from the page to the screen? Do you just leave the section blank and say, okay, insert Jason fight choreography, or is it more sophisticated? What type of direction do you give?
You know, you try and create kind of the atmosphere and tone in the script itself, but then it always takes on a life of its own. And I don't think people understand how much work goes into these things. You know, the stunt team gets together early on in the process before you shoot, and they'll just experiment and they'll videotape it and they'll cut things together, and you go and you watch and you give notes, and everybody has ideas. And, you know, maybe we can throw a bag of cement at this guy. Why don't we throw a bucket of nails? So everyone's kind of adding to it. And then once you're on set, that's where it really comes to life. And that's where the challenge is, because it's hard. You know, you shoot this stuff over days. It's a lot of punches, a lot of repeats. And there's Jason in the middle of it doing everything.
Anyone who's seen your work or knows your work knows that there's going to be a lot of action, as I talked about. Anyone who's seen Jason Statham's work knows that there's a lot of action. But A Working Man, although it is definitely an action movie, tell me if I'm wrong, I would say it's equally about family. Not to say that it's a family movie, but the theme of family is ever present, is it not?
That's exactly it. You know, Jason is this, you know, troubled guy with a past who gets adopted by this loving family that takes him in and gives him opportunity and helps him rebuild himself. And we love them for that. So when it comes his turn to help them, we're really rooting for that to happen. We're really rooting for him to bring their daughter back, you know, who is like his daughter. And even the bad guys have their families and their relationships and their history and their rules and their traditions. And I think that's just part of the human side of things. And when you can bring that to a film and have some incredible action, I think you're going to get a really satisfying experience for the audience.
There was incredible action, no doubt, and there was a lot of heartfelt moments in the movie, which actually surprised me. But was there anything which surprised you, either in the writing, creation, or the filming of the movie, which you said, well, I thought I had one idea going in, but now it's something else?
I would say it's Ariana Rivas, who plays Jenny, the girl that gets kidnapped. I always saw Jenny as a fighter, as someone that could fight back, but Ariana brought this level of humor and presence and spirit to the role that I wasn't expecting. And by the end of it, you almost believe that she could rescue Jason.
How do you know when you are screen testing actors beyond those you've worked with that someone has that special quality or can deliver a particular scene in your mind, or they're just reading some sides? But how do you know you have the right actor or actress?
You know, it's something you know it when you see it. I really feel, and it's one of the toughest parts of the process is casting, because there's all these incredible people and they really put their heart and soul in it. And you have to narrow it down to a few choices and then ultimately one choice. But it's every role requires this own special thing. And sometimes you don't know what that is until you actually see it and you go, okay, there it is. That's the person. And that's what happened with Ariana.
He is David Ayer, writer and director for the new movie A Working Man, starring Jason Statham, now in theaters. David, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and I can't wait for everyone else to see it as well. It's a good one.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And this next story, I'm quite sure, is probably going to piss you off. This next story is probably going to reaffirm a lot of stereotypes and some of our dislikes, if you will, of churches today in America. It's going to remind us some of the problems, of the many problems, I guess, with religion. In fact, this is going to be part of my final thought tonight. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview here. Marvin Sapp, you may have heard of him, you may not have heard of him, but he's a megachurch pastor. He's also a very, very popular gospel artist. He's worth maybe $4 to $5 million. He has a church well respected in those fields. Give you a point of reference. There is an undated clip which is circulating online, and I have a feeling it's relatively recently from what I could discern. And in this clip, he is demanding that anyone who is watching his service, streaming it online, and anyone who is in the actual physical church, they must donate at least $20 to reach a goal of $40,000 before he will let anyone leave who's in the physical church. Quote, close the doors. We all gonna leave together. Y'all ain't going to go no place but to the restaurant. Talking about going out to brunch after service. There's 1,000 of you tonight and those that are watching. It's 1,000 that's watching online. This is a small seed. If I get 1,000 online to give this, if I get 1,000 in the sanctuary to give this, that's $40,000 tonight. I'm challenging each of you all down here to give a $20 seed. Now, everyone up here, we've all sowed and seeded, but I need everyone up here to sow $100 because it costs to sit up here. And he was talking about the people who were in the pulpit alongside of him, other preachers and clergy, church staff. So put your $20 away. That 20 wasn't for you. He continued requesting that the offerings be walked to the front so he could see the massive effort. I can't speak to this in all churches, but what is common in the black church tradition is you walk and you hand your offering. You're a cheerful giver, and you walk and you're paraded around the whole church for everyone to see that you're actually, quote unquote, giving your tithes and offerings. All I know is this is not an uncommon phenomenon, and I can give you many examples, maybe not this extreme, but very close to it, where you would have preachers, ministers who refused to end their sermon or end the service without getting a certain dollar amount. And mind you, there are a lot of people in church, all they have left is their faith. They are there because they're going through something. They need a word, as it said. They need some sort of reassurance, some sort of message which speaks to them personally and can help them individually. I don't know if you've never been to church, but there are many times where I would go to church and you would think that that message on that day was meant particularly for me because it spoke to something that was going on in my life, and I was encouraged because of it. There is a purpose for a service. There's, especially when you're talking about someone who's a newbie in Christ, someone who may have just been born again, and they're looking for guidance. And that's why, and I say this unfortunately, that's why many times people will look at the minister as the conduit between that person and God. And then you learn more about the Bible, and then you don't need that type of intercessor. You don't need someone in between as a go-between. And I always make the distinction between faith and religion. This is an example of why people hate religion.
There are two churches here in the Southland that I no longer go to. One, is a relatively large church, almost mega church status. The pastor is related to a globally renowned singer, very, very avant-garde singer. And
you're really narrowing it down now. You know that, right?
I know. And this pastor proceeded to have, on the last occasion that I went to his church, he proceeded to have an hour-long offering. Hour-long, meaning for 1 hour, he proceeded to berate the congregation for an offering.
You mean like from the beginning of my interview with David Ayer to the end of the show?
Yes. An entire hour of asking.
Including commercials.
Yes, including asking for offerings. The second was a church that found its home from a large auditorium to actually moving up to the Forum.
And I know who that is.
And that pastor who made that move and took over the Forum was not in that day. But this was a special occasion, and the special guest pastor proceeded to tell us that nothing was going to happen. Nothing was going to happen. We were not going to get a word. We were not going to hear from the choir. Nothing was going to happen until we had all donated enough to, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, reach a similar amount. And there was a lot of superstars in that congregation. There were a lot of well-known athletes, actors and actresses, all sitting in the front row, who all got that VIP parking and VIP escort up to the front so they could get in and out. And it was a real to-do to be at this church at the Forum. And we sat there that night because it was a nighttime service. I believe it was the Christmas Eve service. It cost a lot to even go, to get tickets to go. So we paid a lot to go.
You had to pay for the tickets.
Yes.
And then you had to give a tithe and offering to the satisfaction of the guest speaker.
Yes. It was enough to make me say, oh, hell to the nah. We are not coming back here.
You got something against a holy shakedown now and then? I don't see what the problem is.
Put it this way. And we're talking about these tax-exempt organizations, which are doing more for themselves than they are in the community. And I'm not saying all churches. I've seen some small, what they call storefront churches, do a lot in the community. But these mega churches and these mega pastors oftentimes are not punching their weight. There, you see the enrichment of the pastor. You see it in their clothes, their cars, sometimes jets. And you see, well, let me back up. Now, a lot of churches are preaching and teaching what is called the prosperity gospel, where if you donate more money, you will receive more money in your life. You know, it's not about salvation. It's about getting more money. And the way that you can live better or live life more abundantly, as the verse goes, is to you donate more. Now, there are Bible verses which speak to tithes and offerings. It's Malachi 3:8. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so if I get it wrong, sorry. Malachi 3:8, and I know my pastor would always say it, bring ye all the tithes to the storehouse, so there may be meat in my house. And now prove you herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will not open up a window and a blessing will pour out of it. In other words, the more money you give, the more that you're going to be blessed. And that has been bastardized. That's the word I mean, bastardized, to be the whole point of the gospel, where the more you donate, the more that you will be blessed. And then that opens the door for the real shakedown to happen, where you have preachers just outright saying, well, you're going to hell if you don't donate or, tithe or give a certain amount of offering on this type of day. So it hurts my heart, because as a person of faith, and I'm not sinless, let's be clear, I'm a cracked vessel and I fall short. It hurts my heart because I see the manipulation of the church and how it extends beyond just the church walls. We see it through use of the Bible in politics. We see it in many varied forms. We see it in the cover-up of abuses in like the Catholic Church. Talk about all that. So I'm not going to give it away now. But when I see this, what Marvin Sapp was doing, it just hurts my heart, because you're just taking advantage of people. You have a tax-exempt organization, and you personally have a personal net worth of some $4 to $5 million, and you're going to hold people hostage who may not have a pot to urinate in or a window in which to throw it out.
Just like Jesus taught us.
No, look, the church that we went to at the Forum, the money that was being asked for was for specifically pastoral care. And it was prosperity preaching, because we were told that by giving freely to take care of he who brings us the word of God, we would then be blessed eternally, even more so, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you just told me we're not leaving here. You're not starting nothing until we give more money to the pastor.
I got more on this. We got to go to a break, but I have more to say on this. Now you got me remembering stuff and thinking about stuff and getting mad about stuff all over again.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And last segment, I was telling you about Marvin Sapp, who's a very influential, famous, not only megachurch pastor, but also gospel artist. And there's a video going around where he was holding his own congregation, I will say hostage. Maybe that's too strong a word, but he was shaking down his congregation, would not let them leave until they ponied up between the online streaming audience and also the in sanctuary audience $40,000 on this random Sunday. And it got me thinking about my issues with the church over the years. Tawala was telling his stories, and I can't speak for all churches, but it's common within the historically black church tradition. What I mean by that is there's Kojic, which is the Church of God in Christ. There's AME, African Methodist Episcopal. There are others. There's a type of tradition and a way in which services run, obviously Southern Baptist, and money usually is at the forefront of it, unfortunately. And it's manipulative, it's unkind, it's ungodly, and it goes on every single day. And I understand why it turns off people to religion, which is different from faith. And if you don't understand the difference, it can harm your faith as well. I know, I can't speak for Tawala, but I know in the churches I've been in, there are things that the church would pay for. In other words, your tithes and offerings would go to the parsonage, which was where the pastor or preacher would live. In other words, they would have that an actual house that we would pay for, or there would be a housing allowance or a car allowance, just like someone who worked at any other corporation. So for the most part, especially with the mega churches, all the personal needs of a pastor are already taken care of. And almost every single church, they had this thing called the building fund, where you would always have to set aside money, which is different from your tithes, which is supposed to be 10% of your treasure, is different from your offerings, because your offering is supposed to be over and above what you're giving for your tithe. And then outside of your tithe and offering, you would have to set aside even more money for like the building fund, or you'd have to do this, or you're paying for that. It's always something, and it's every single week. But the funny thing is, when the church wanted to do anything which wasn't for the benefit of the pastor, then the church would have to do something like a bake sale or a fish fry, selling fish plates. I mean, it was always on the shoulders of the members to pay for everything for the pastor and everything for the church. And you're always behind the eight ball. Some emergency has got to be done today, or they're going to turn the lights out or something like that. And after a while, it's like you just burn people out. You run off people who are consistent tithers, who do tithe, pay that 10% every single week. And I was a tither for a long time. And then you get just disenchanted and disappointed with it.
The worst part is, and I think this is something that I can only speak on the black church, but one thing that would always rub me the wrong way is how you would have a pastor, a superstar pastor in the city of Los Angeles. And I don't care if you're over on Crenshaw, I don't care where you are, but you look at the people, those of us who are coming, those of us who have maybe just that one suit or that one nice outfit to wear to church, and you look at honestly how little the congregation has, how little the people who are coming to receive a word and to be set right on their week coming ahead, get over what their week before had to offer, and who are looking to be lifted up, how little they have and how much faith and how much love they have for you and your word and what you're supposed to be filling and imparting us with. And then to feel like the only way that we can get to that word is through raking our own wallets, which most of the time we don't have. That is what leaves that sour taste in individuals' minds.
I know someone has been in a church like me and had the pastor say, you know that money in your pocket? That's God's money. God put that in your pocket. It's not yours. It's not yours to hold on to.
Were you there? What are you saying?
It's time for you now to give it back to the Lord so his work can be done.
Who gave you that money in the first place? Who gave you the job to make the money that you're making in the first place? Somebody say, who? God. God gave you that money. God gave you that job. And if you want to make sure that you go to the next level, you looking for a raise? You looking for that promotion? Who's going to give it to you? God.
Will a man rob God?
Man, look.
It was every single week. It's every single week. So I understand what they call church hurt. I understand how people can become discontent with the whole idea of religion. I understand intellectually and from a faith perspective how you just, or put it this way, how people become agnostic or become atheists, because for me, I think they wrongly conflate religion with faith, or they've had religion damage their faith. I get it. It makes perfect sense to me. And the reason why we're talking about the Marvin Sapp story, and I try to let you know, we talk about big stories. This was covered even by TMZ, okay, with no connection to Marvin Sapp. It's a huge story that you're going to hear more and more about it, if only because more times than not, people have a similar story to offer. And in the age of the internet, it's less likely that people are going to be able to hide what they do in churches because people are going to expose them. And I say bravo, because that's not the word. That's not a part of what is actually in the word, or it's a part of becoming saved, as they say in the church. You know, it's a bastardization, and it's unfortunate. Got my final thought when we come back, and we'll also talk to George Norrie, Coast to Coast AM. KFI AM 640, we're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. Coming up in moments, we'll be Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. But here's the good news. He joins me right now with the preview. What's up, sir?
I love joining you, Mo. It's fun.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I always enjoy talking to you. It's weird for me, if only because I have listened to you for so long, and I mean that in a very respectful way, and then get the opportunity to talk to you and joke with you. That's a real treat for me.
Well, likewise, my friend, you're a good guy. On the show tonight, we're going to talk about the future of the world, and then later on, there's a Japanese custom called the Doomsday Fish. We're going to talk about that on Coast to Coast.
All right, I'll be tuning in. I'll miss you, my friend. Be well.
See you, buddy.
And before we get out of here, you know what my final word is going to be on. And I'm going to try not to offend everybody listening, but I make no guarantees, and I also make no apologies. Let me put it that way. And I've been thinking about this over the years in a general sense, but with the Marvin Sapp story, it kind of meant that I needed to talk about it now. Faith and religion, they're two different things. Religion has nothing to do with faith. Religion is about dogma. It's about rules. It's about dictating how you're supposed to live your life, how you worship. That's religion. Faith, on the other hand, is your personal relationship with Jesus or your God. It's your one-on-one conversation with the Almighty. It's very personal. But one definitely impacts the other. You can have a bad experience with the church or a minister, and I told you about some of mine, and Twala told you about some of his. That bad experience can damage your faith, especially if you're a newbie in Christ. In other words, you're just new in your religious experience, learning about Christ. That's what it means to be a newbie. And betrayal by religion is not a new phenomenon. And yes, money is still the root of all evil. We've seen it with the Catholic Church and priest molestation scandals. We've seen it with these megachurch pastors time and time again. from garden variety sex scandals to financial malfeasance scandals. It seems like the bigger the church or profile of the pastor, the bigger the sins. It's really no wonder why church attendance is at an all-time low and atheism grows at almost a proportional rate. There's a connection there. Throw in politics and you really have a cluster truck. America wants to turn itself into a theocracy and tell everyone how to live, even though this has never been a Christian nation. Getting ready to step on toes. Never been a Christian nation. We may be a nation of mostly Christians, but never an actual Christian nation. There's no mention of Jesus Christ in either the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. I know for a fact, I looked, it's not there. The phrase, "In God we trust," was added to money and the Pledge of Allegiance in the 1950s as a response to communism, not as a founding principle of the country. And never mind the fact that just mentioning the word God doesn't make something Christian. Hate to be pedantic and all biblical-like, but the whole idea of Christianity has a Jesus requirement. Christianity requires that you confess with your mouth and believe with all your heart that Jesus is the Son of God, was crucified, and rose on the third day. That, in short, is what it means to be a Christian. Not just mentioning the word God or reciting it as part of a Pledge of Allegiance. The New Testament is pretty clear about that. But that's assuming that you've, actually read the Bible and not just put Christian on your social media profile. And you're not using that to quote unquote virtue signal as to the other religions or the people who are of other religions that you don't like. But you don't have to take my word for it. Go ahead and read the Bible for yourself. My main point tonight is that religion has poisoned or has been poisoned, depending on how you look at it. Religion today is more a weapon and blunt object to bludgeon people to behave a certain way, hate certain people, justify books to be banned, and or dictate women's health decisions. Oh, yes, I'm going there. People use the Bible to cherry pick issues to manipulate other people's lives, not live their own lives. Being a Christian is about how you individually live, not how other people live or who other people marries. Actual Christians know this. They will call themselves pro-life, yet are indifferent to what the Bible says about treating the stranger in your land or how we should care for the poor and the needy. That's what I mean by cherry picking. I told you earlier this hour about a megachurch pastor and gospel music star, Marvin Sapp, worth more than $4 million, who refused to let people exit his church until the congregation ponied up $40,000 collectively. A congregation who likely are all less wealthy than Sapp. A congregation who can get shaken down or robbed any day of the week anywhere else. Just weren't expecting to get robbed on Sunday in the house of the Lord. $40,000 for his tax-exempt church. But Sapp is closer to the rule than the exception. Or we could talk about megachurch pastor Joel Osteen, who had to be shamed into opening up his megachurch to flood victims during the 2017 Hurricane Harvey, and had the dirty nerve to defend his decision to keep his church doors closed. Those are just some of the examples of religion, not faith. The problem in America, and here is the real takeaway. The problem in America is not that there aren't enough people calling themselves Christian. The problem in America is not that the Christianity hasn't been woven into the Constitution. The problem is we've decided to use Christian as a way to signal to others who we hate. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly.
KFI is literally the KFI of talk radio. KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the Ayer Radio app.